Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our new talk. This is the second part of the talk based on Hazrat IMAMI Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu and all those events. So before that, I would like to recite in rhythm these two verses. IMAMI आशिकां पूरे बतूल IMAMI आशिकां पूरे बतूल सर्वे आज़ादी ज़िबुस्तान ने रसूल अल्लाह अल्लाह बे बिस्मिल्लाह पिदर मानिए ज़िब्हे ज़ीम अहमद पिसर IMAMI आशिकां पूरे बतूल सर्वे आज़ादी ज़िबुस्तान ने रसूल अल्लाह अल्लाह बे बिस्मिल्लाह पिदर मानिए ज़िब्हे ज़ीम अहमद पिदर औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम गरीबो सादाओ रंगी है दास्ताने हरम निहायत इसकी हुसैन इब्तिदा इस्माइल है औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम क़ाल अल्लाहु फ़िल क़ुरआनिल करीम इन्ना आतैना कल कौसर फसल्लि लिरब्बिका वन्हर इन्न शानिअका हुवल अब्तर. So in our previous talk, the part 1 of this talk, we have discussed about the historical events, how the governors of Kufa, Basra, Medina and Makkah, including Yazid being the caliph, so-called pseudo-caliph of that time, that era, how the letters were written by the people, by the leaders of the people of the Iraq, and the letters were written to Hazrat Hussain, and later Hazrat Muslim bin Aqil was sent to gather the information, and people were promised if the letters they have written to Imam Hussain, if they come to be true, or if the events are the same, they are saying that we'll be obedient to you and we will just give the allegiance to Imam Hussain. And for that reason, some Safirs of Imam Hussain were sent to gather the information. And herein I would like to quote some authors, non-Muslim authors. And I would like to quote whom everybody knows, and Indians know him as the father of the nation. I'm talking about Gandhi. Gandhiji, I would say in his lines, the best ever tribute, what he gives to Hazrat Imam Hussain, and further how he starts that I learned from Hussain how to achieve victory while being oppressed. So this is the greatest statement, that even if he doesn't have the members like Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but he says that how to achieve victory. Further he says that his faith is that the progress of Islam doesn't depend on the use of sword. So this is the greatest statement, that the progress of the Islam doesn't depend on the use of sword. But how, on what it depends? It depends on the supreme sacrifice of Hussain. And further, the quote he quotes that is ever a best quote ever written in the history, in the pages of the history. Because what he writes, that he doesn't write about the Alexander the Great or those fighters. He doesn't acclaim the position of Odyssey, the adventures of Odyssey and the War of Troy, and the adventures of Ulysses, and for 10 years how they have gained the experience of the war and how they have won the name and title from different kings. But he doesn't write here anything about them. But he writes that the statement is worth mentioning here, if I quote that, if I had an army like the 72 soldiers of Hussain, I would have one freedom for India in 24 hours. So this is the greatest statement ever written in the page of history, or I would say that including Muslims and non-Muslims, the greatest tribute which is to Imam Hussain, because Gandhiji knows that there were 500 years back to them. For 500 years we are slaves of the Britishers. And when being the slaves of the Britishers here, how he needs now the 72 members, the soldiers, like the loyal soldiers of the family. And he says not only in 500, he doesn't talk of 200 years, he doesn't talk of 300 years, he doesn't talk of 50 years. He talks, the statement is worth mentioning only in 24 hours. And I would like to give the commentary of this in the form of the verse of Allama Iqbal, and Allama Iqbal being the celebrated pride of every time, every nation, and the tribute I have had of the Allama Iqbal had been not there in the history of the page, as Allama is really the greatest of the poets who gives the great tribute to Imam Hussain. And when Allama has to start, he doesn't start with the direct tribute of Imam Hussain, but he tributes him the son of the Fatima, he tributes him the son of the Ali, Mardone Ali. Why not 72 soldiers? And why not the people of the scholars, the politicians, the parliamentarians, they would not like to give the attribute to Imam Hussain? And I would like also to give a tribute of my verses as well. These are the pre-verses. The pre-verses of mine, and Hazrat Hussain Farzande Ali Mardast, Hazrat Hussain Farzande Ali Mardast, Hazrat Hussain az Shah Karbala ast. I Hussain man سردار شبابان اهل جنت گفت پیغمبر. ای حسین من شباب سردار شبابان اهل جنت گفت پیغمبر. ای حسین من نوری چشم فاطمه است. And when Allama has to give tribute, he says, دشمنان چوریگه سهرات اد. Like we are saying about the 72 soldiers, دشمنان چوریگه سهرات اد دوستانه او بایزدا هم عدد. دوستانه او بایزدا هم عدد. If ever there were the countless people from the enemies, the countless army like the sand of the desert, but we had only the 72 members. دشمنان چورگه سهرات اد دوستانه او بایزدا هم عدد. Oh, these are the great verses. I would not like to give only the tribute of these verses, but I'm myself emotional. I want to, myself being, my emotions being raised, I want to give further verses, how he says, Imam Ashikan Pure Batul, Imam Ashikan Pure Batul, Sarve Azadi Zabustane Rasul, Allah Allah Be Bismillah Pidar, Moniye Zibhe Azim Ahmad Pidar, بحر آن شاهزاده خیرول ملل، بحر آن شاهزاده خیرول ملل، دوش ختم المرسلی نعم الجمل. And here the important verse goes of Allama. It reminds me that if you remind better the story of Hazrat Mansur Halaj, if you remind better the story of Hazrat Mansur Halaj, how he, when he gives the sacrifice of himself and how he takes the blood and just rubs that on the face, and here you say Surukhro ishke goyur az khune u. Wah wah, Surukhro ishke goyur az khune u. Surukhro ishke goyur az khune u. Surkhe I misra az mazmune u. Surkhe ru I misra az mazmune u. And further says Allama, Zinda haq quwwat shabir ast. Zinda haq quwwat shabir ast. Batil akhir dagi حسرت میرست بر زمین کربلا بارید و رفت بر زمین کربلا بارید و رفت لال در ویران کارید و رفت تا قیامت قاطع استبداد کرد موج خون او چمن ایجاد کرد. These are the great verses, great verses. مدعاش سلطنت بوده اگر خود نهرده با چنین سامان سفر. These tributes, I don't want to stop here, as some more scholars, not only the Gandhiji, but you could say that when says the greatest writer of Islamic mysticism, Nicholson, Reynold Allen Nicholson, and some other greatest writers who have written about Maulana Room, giving great tribute to the pages of the verses of Maulana Room or Allama Iqbal, and Mira Shimal, you know that, and Hazrat Nicholson, the great tribute. And when he writes, and what he writes, that when the by arrow, when Hussain was pierced, Nicholson says, and the followers, the family members, were cut down by his side till lost member, by his side till lost member. And you have to say what he says. Actually, the arrow was pierced. This is the same arrow. This is the same place, the forage where Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would used to kiss his grandson. This is the same place, because he loves the great son. When he was asked by, says, Atani Jibreel, what he said then, he said the message about that, whether he has to keep Hazrat Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhu or has to keep Hazrat IMAMI Hussain. And it was decided later he would keep only Hazrat IMAMI Hussain. And when he was pierced, why not pierced? Because 72 members were there. And I want to give my own tribute in my own verses here. Lagawan tir bahadur shir kharan, lagawan tir bahadur shir kharan, parantim toitet kalimay Muhammad, kuriyaz virb takbir res Hussainan, parant talwar as kalimay Muhammad. And I have started it from, because we Sunnis, and how we narrate the tale and how we narrate the legend of IMAMI Hussain, Yun kaha kartey Sunni Dastani Ahl Bayt. And I have started it from the Sahabis, because we never leave Sahabis when we have to discuss Ahl Bayt, and we never leave Ahl Bayt when we have to discuss Sahabis. Because you know how much love was produced by Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu for the grandson of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it is ibadah to see the face of Ali. Who said it? It was Hazrat Ashya Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha. She narrates it on behalf of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, that to see the face of Ali. So this was the love for the Ahl Bayt. And whenever it would be, Mali Ganimat would be brought from the wars, from different wars, by Hazrat Umar Farooq, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the best one will be chosen for Hazrat IMAMI Hussain by Hazrat Umar Farooq. And then he would get happy. And who says that we don't pay the tribute to Ahl Bayt? So we have to keep the very thing like our grand poet, like our grand poet of Kashmir, Hazrat Shams Fakir. He gives a great tribute to Sahabis and later gives great tribute to Hazrat Ali Karamallahu Ta'ala Wajhu. Because what Karbala is actually is the story of the transference of the wilaya khasa, wilaya shamsiya, wilaya qamariya at the hands of Hazrat Ali Murtaza radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says, he gives great tribute when he says about Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, the first Caliph, and then Hazrat Umar Farooq, Allah tim kurne tim kya zabar durjitin farzandas zonun behtar soinian doil Hazratan zuhur tim kush don alman. This was the greatest tribute. And later other tributes which are like he says Wadishus Amame about Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, Wadishus Amame Halid Zulfqar, and the Wadanshus Nar Haider. So I have also started from these verses. Like from Hazrat Umr Farouk tulan talwar nera wad kirthi kari katle nabi az nay dinuk tulan talwar nera wad kirthi kari katle nabi az nay dinuk wuchan ibn khitab yel mahjibinas talan chus palinirith kalmu dinuk karam parchar yel jahil zamanas gada yak jahtiman kunsi khadayas paran kalme shahadat chani dinuk. Then I have ended the verses like here at the time of Mihraj when it goes Malaiko log walmun ya Muhammad luko fari pahadan zikr lejas ya Muhammad luko faryad kur az rahiban nish timo tadis shahadat sui Muhammad Malaiko log walmun ya Muhammad pahadan zikr lejas ya Muhammad luko faryad kur az rahiban nish timo tadis shahadat sui Muhammad Lagawan tir. These are the verses. I have 500 verses of mine which I have ended at the event of this Karbala. Lagawan tir Bahadur Shir Kharan Barantim Toit Tet Kalime Muhammad Kuri as Bird Takbir Hussainan Baran Talwar as Kalime Muhammad. This is really the greatest tribute. What Osborne says, Osborne says that when Hazrat Ali, 1 year old Ali, was in the hands of Hazrat IMAMI HUSSAIN, and how the arrows pierced both, how the arrows pierced these young people. And Charles Dickens is right to say that he's not sure what people are saying about that this was the battle, this was the great operation. Had it been for the worldly desires, then he would not have taken Imam Hussain. The women folk with them, women folk with him, the children with him. As you know, there were old people, there were children, at least 10 to 12 children were below the age of 10 years. And Hazrat Zainab, she would not have been taken by Imam when it would have been the war, because that was the sacrifice, that was the greatest thing, the dream of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam narrated Imam Hussain, that with this you will get the dignity high. And you don't have any, even if there was a grandeur show of those dynasties, of those caliphs or those the cruel kings, nothing remained there. Nothing remained there, as nothing then remained there. Nothing remained there, as says Allama Iqbal, Shawqat Shamo, Shawqat Shamo fare Baghdad raft, Satwate Garnata ham az yad raft. Garnata, the kingdom of Garnata, is not there, anything is not there, nothing is there, nothing remains there of the kingdom, everything is vanished. It's only because of the Hussein's tribute, how he gave the sacrifice in the field of Karbala. As Carlyle says that because they were the strict believers, and why not? But Jawaharlal Nehru says that there is a universal appeal. Yes, there is a great universal appeal in his martyrdom. He never gave any weight to the fact that his material force was far less in comparison with that of any. Because it reminded me of one verse of mine, एक तरफ तीरो तुफंग और कातिलों का जोर था, एक तरफ इब्ने अली शेरे खुदा का शोर था. And even if there was the zor, there was the arrows, there was the ammunition. What I am just explaining, that he never gave any weight to the fact that his material force was less. एक तरफ तीरो तुफंग और कातिलों का जोर था, एक तरफ इब्ने अली शेरे खुदा का शोर था. And I remind further my verses, I want to give my verses more. हुए जब खून में लथपथ वो असगर, हुए जब खून में लथपथ वो असगर, पढ़ा कलिमा मोहम्मद मुस्कुरा कर, बढ़ा फिर फातिमा का सारा लश्कर, चली फिर गूंज बस अल्लाहु अकबर. So this was the sacrifice of the greatest thing there in the world, that is to give the message of oneness of God, the Tawheed, the greatest thing in the world. Qul huwallahu ahad. हुए जब खून में लथपथ वो असगर, पढ़ा कलिमा मोहम्मद मुस्कुरा कर, बढ़ा फिर फातिमा का सारा लश्कर, चली फिर गूंज बस अल्लाहु अकबर. And what Iqbal says further, I want to explain it here. Naqsh نقش illallah bar sahra نوشت نقش illallah bar sahra نوشت سطر عنوان نجات ما نوشت رمز قرآن از حسین آموختم ز آتش شعله ها انداختم. These are the great verses. رمز قرآن از حسین آموختم ز آتش شعله ها انداختم. These are the great verses. And really, when Allama has to give more tribute he discusses about whose son, the son of Fatima, about whom you know that she's also known by the kunyat as Abuha, the mother of her father. Really, because when it is discussed that every dynasty will get vanished at the time of doomsday, but the dynasty would be there, it would be the dynasty of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what about the Fatima to Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha, that she is herself the father and she is herself the mother of the children. So it was not the war. Charles Dickens says rightly that had it been for the worldly desires, that children would not have been there. Really, it was not there when he was in Madain. He got the letters. Now he had to remind only to Yazid that it's the same treaty. What treaty was signed with Hazrat IMAMI HUSSAIN, the elder brother? He had to remind them that he's the grandson of the Prophet. And really, this was not only the war against any person like Imam Hussain, but it was the war against the Vilayat Khasa, which was transferred to Hazrat Ali Karamallahu Ta'ala Wajhu, Man Kunt Mawla fa Aliyun Mawla. So to give the tribute to this Vilayat, that is called Illal Mawaddata fil Qurba. That's real called Illal Mawaddata, when you are highlighting the Vilayat. What Vilayat? The spiritual Vilayat. Why? Because why the caliphs were very afraid of the Ahl Bayt, the people of the house. I would say not only Yazid, but Yazid was transferred in the form of Marwan, Malik bin Marwan and others, how Yazid's tyranny was there, how the tyranny of caliphs was there, that was a great thing. I would just remind you one event there at the time when it was the time of Hajj, and the Qasida Farzadak was there. Farzadak was a great Qasida go. He was by chance there, and it was a person was going, and people were just giving the way to the person, just giving the way to him, that he would just reach to Hajr Aswad. And at the same time, it was the coming of Malik bin Marwan. At the time, it was Caliph, and the tyranny of those people, even nobody would have dared at that time to raise the eyebrows in front of those caliphs like Yazid, Marwan, and others. And then who should have defied the order? If order would have been just go and kill them, they would never have done to cage them. Go and cage them. They would never have done to kill them. So orders are always from the caliph. So there, when it happened that he had to just give the kiss to Hajr Aswad, and at the time, and it was in the hypocritic way, to see that people are giving way to this person, and Malik bin Marwan says, because nobody pays attention to him, says, Man hada rajul. At the same time, he just quotes some 15 verses or some other verses that at the time, what do you say that who's this person? Do you know who's this person? Even the sand of this desert, even the cover of the Kaaba and all the things they are aware about this person. He's none, but he's Hazrat Zainul Abidin. So, Man Kunt Mawla fa Aliyun Mawla was the greatest thing, that if I stand authority anywhere, that I stand it to be Hazrat Ali Karamallahu Ta'ala Wajhu. This was the greatest tribute. So this was not a war against only the person, but Walayat. Because after Walayat, when we will go somewhere, Alibab, people would be after them. And the second thing, when you remember the hadith of, or listen to the hadith of Hazrat Salama or others about, or Atani Jibril, when he gives this clay of this Karbala, even Salama, she narrates that when Hazrat Muhammad came, because of the hair, the position of the hair, and everything was not good, and I said where you were, and then Hazrat Muhammad narrated the story of Hazrat Imam Hussain. He would be sacrificed, he would give the greatest sacrifice there in Karbala. He would be made shaheed there, and gave the clay, and when it will turn red, and you think that he gave the sacrifice. At that time, I would say that there is always the future flight, or the flight to the past time. Time is in two ways two types. One is serial time and one is absolute time. And even if you don't understand the point, maybe in physics in future that physics gets advanced to know the future events or the past events. When says Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he saw the Karbala there and the event, everything was seen there. Maybe it was the future flight there, and in future flight when Hazrat Imam Hussain was giving blood, giving the sacrifice there, and it would have been seen by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and saying that, don't you know that who is this, the proud man of who is this to all prophets? And he says that Hussain minni wa ana min al-Hussain. And maybe at the same time, I don't say exactly yet, I don't force my words, at the same time the words and rewards were given, inna atayna kal kawsar by Allah. So dear students, in the previous talk we had already given a lot of verses of Allama Iqbal and Maulana Rumi and other Sanai, and my own verses about Fatima al-Zahra and Hazrat Imam Hussain. So this talk was about, and I would also mention that not only this, what Rajendra Prasad says, Dr. Radhakrishnan says that this was an indestructible soul, Hussein's soul. Till the time has gone, it's a distant time, but people still know him. Even Sarojini Naidu, she gives a great tribute in the form of the poem she wrote on Hussain ibn Ali. The poem discusses about the elegy, the crying of the people at the time they remind, and they call in melancholy what they call Hussain, Ya Hussain. These are the verses of Sarojini Naidu. So dear students and dear viewers and dear my friends and all those who have been with me for a lot of time, for at least 9-10 months, and they've been learning the Arabic course. They have been learning the Arabic course, English course, and all other different course. So inshallah we'll see in the next lesson. So wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.